So I was just talking to a guest and we were talking about self-worth. And one of the most interesting things that I have found in my career throughout years of talking to people who feel burned out and feel like they've lost their joy in their lives and their health is declining because of it. A lot of the action that needs to be taken comes from us feeling like we're not good enough. Like we're not good enough to be successful. We're not good enough to be thin. We're not good enough to go for what we really want, to quit our job, to find our joy. We're not good enough as parents. We're not good enough as spouses. We're not good enough at anything we do. And it is interesting because I do wonder, how did we learn? We were born thinking we were good enough. We didn't know any different. And some place along the way, lost self-worth. We put our worth on what other people determined we were to be. And from that, we enter into all these challenges in our young adulthood. And I think our 20s and 30s are often just littered with trying to be something that maybe we're not, fighting for something to show ourselves, to show us that we can do it, but not because it really follows our heart and our soul and our life's mission. And what this guest and I were talking about was how if you look back to what you wanted to be when you were 5, she had said you may want to be a fireman, right? And it didn't mean that you literally wanted to be a fireman, but maybe it was that you really wanted to help people. You really wanted to jump in when people needed you and be there for them. What was that emotion or that action that you wanted to be when you were little? And are you doing that right now in some way in your life, or have you let that go? Has your self-worth been dictated by other people rather than who you know inside your gut, in the inner soul of your heart, who you are? And when I sit back as a parent, and I think, did our parents get us to that point where we started to question whether we were good enough? And what are we doing with our children in teaching them the same thing? Are we able to break that cycle? There's a lot of research. There was a book that came out many years ago called The Nurture Shock, which talked about how even telling kids that they're really good at everything can be a hindrance to them because you're labeling them in some way. You're saying this is what you are before they've figured out who they are. And society likes to label, likes to make judgment. And this isn't everything. We get labeled with all sorts of different things. Oh, she's a doctor, right? Well, they don't have much money. Or, well, they're really tall. Well, they're really short. Well, they're really skinny. Well, they're really fat. Well, they're black. Well, they're white. Whatever. We label. We like labels for some reason. But how are these labels hindering us from being our authentic selves, our authentic voices? How do we overcome that as parents and teach our kids that it's okay to just be them as ever they are and that nobody has to label that? Nobody has to tell them what to do or what's right. And what's the balance with that on guiding kids towards success, right? Because you obviously are not going to let them flail completely. There's some sort of guidance that needs to happen. So where's that fine line between allowing them to develop who they are and modeling the right behavior for them, yet also guiding them to be successful if we ourselves are living through success that's false? I've lived in a false sense of success for a very long time. It wasn't until more recent years that I started to really think, what is my legacy? What am I doing here? What's my purpose in life? Why do I show up every day? Why do I wake up every day? And then how can that passion for what I do teach my kids to find something with passion for them, whatever that may be, rather than telling them what they have to do in order to be successful? I think we're coming to a crossroads in health with this. I think we're seeing a crossroads in healthcare with the aspect of mindset and body. What we think is what our body does. So if we think we're ill, we are ill. If we think we're not good enough, we're not good enough. If we think we can't do it, we can't do it. If we think it's hard, it will be hard. That is a part of medicine that has been somewhat ignored for a while, that is coming back into the mainstream with a lot of the things that I do: naturopathic medicine, functional medicine, integrative medicine. energy medicine, is starting to bring in, even this whole world of psychedelic medicine is starting to bring in this idea that we have a path and we have a gut instinct, and our body and our subconscious knows what we need to do. But our conscious mind and our external environment tells us we can't, or tells us it's going to be difficult and we don't want to feel uncomfortable, so we don't do something difficult. But how do we change that? I was encouraged to just pop on here and just talk, not really knowing what I'm going to say. But I can tell you, and it brings a tear to my eye because this really is something I'm so passionate about. If we as adults and parents do not change the behavior that we are modeling for our children and future generations, we are going to see more problems as they grow up, more pediatric health problems, more emotional problems, more focus problems, more self-worth problems, and I don't see how that's benefiting us. I was raised in a time where it was like, you can do anything you want and you can do it perfectly and you are amazing. And I was told I could do everything, yet I probably grew up with some of the, self-worth was not something I had. And something I've had to find in my face that I never had. Yet I was told I could do it all. So was that helpful to me or not? I wonder if we start talking about this and we start really looking at this from a perspective of doing rather than saying, being nice to others, paying it forward, staying out of a negative space, recognizing the opportunities that all of us have, even if the opportunities are vastly different, finding the opportunity in the heartache, finding the lessons in the lost, finding compassion for others that are different than us, being open to alternative viewpoints as a lesson and a way to look at something differently. I feel like as a society we're losing that, and we're modeling for our children that we shouldn't talk to each other and that we should be angry with each other and that you're on this side or this side, or you're either this or that. And if you're that, then you can't do that. Or then you're this, right? That breaks my heart. It just really does, because it's stupid. I've had the fortunate opportunity to interview many people on this channel. Not all of them have been released yet, but there's a common theme. Everyone, regardless of size, color, gender, socioeconomic status, viewpoints, political affiliation, everybody struggles with wanting to be liked, with wanting to be loved, with wanting to be accepted, with wanting to be heard. Everybody. It's universal. And that has been quite an epiphany, because for so long I felt alone. And I'm sure you've felt alone, like the world is falling apart, or that we're doing this on our own, or that we have to do it because nobody's going to be there. When in reality, when we're all focused in our little tunnel, and we're all doing the things that we feel like we have to do, and we're all blaming and labeling and slowing ourselves down due to other external factors, we're not getting any closer to happiness or joy. And if we're all struggling with the same thing, isn't there an opportunity here to find that joy? To learn from those struggles, to learn from other people, so that you can decide what decisions you're going to make today when you open your mouth, or when you run into someone you haven't seen, or when you hear something that upsets you, or someone annoys you, your response to that. Don't we owe it to ourselves to know that we're enough? Who we are, where we are. We don't have to prove ourselves to anyone else. We are who we are, and we are beautiful, and you are beautiful. I find it interesting, this common thread, and I look forward to talking to more people about how they found their true, authentic selves and what they had to let go to do that. Because here's the lesson as I wrap it up, is in order to just soar, you have to let things go. And if you're not going to let things go and you're going to hang on to them, you can only go so far. You're tethered to whatever it is that you think you are. You're tethered to whatever it is that you've been labeled or what you've been done. It isn't until you release yourself from that pressure, you release yourself from that perfectionism, you release yourself from that judgment, that you find true, authentic joy. Thanks for listening.